Welcome to the Wednesday Wellbeing Show. I'm Amanda Joy. It's absolutely lovely to have you here tonight. I hope you've had a right nice week and you've been up to lots and lots of exciting and interesting things. Do text the show and let us know what you've been getting up to if it's outright good. Tonight, I am absolutely blessed to be chatting with Frank Ramsey. Frank came on my show, on my Tuesday Vibe show, a few weeks ago now, and got talking about all of the amazing things that he does. He's an acupuncturist, a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. His background is in mental health nursing, and he holds a postgraduate diploma in mental health nursing, as well as being the author of Healing and Adventure. The author of Healing and Adventure, an incredible book where he shares about his life story, his experience, his journey, and his passion to support people with mental well-being challenges. Frank really wants to shine a light on all things mental health, mental well-being related, and I'm delighted to have him back on the show tonight. Welcome back to the Wednesday Wellbeing Show, Frank. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much. Yes, nice to be back.
So the last time we had you on, obviously we were talking about who you are and what you do, and we picked up on the fact that one of your areas where you just have loads and loads of passion and drive and motivation is in really supporting people who struggle with mental well-being challenges. But tell us a little bit more just about yourself, because for those people who missed the last show, just tell us a little bit about who are you? Who are you? Where are you from? Yeah. Where do you work? And what do you normally do? And what have you currently been doing?
All right, sure. So I'm from London originally, and I'm 42 years old. So I was brought up in London, and I always had an interest in martial arts, and that led me into studying Chinese medicine. That's what I did first. I did a degree in traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture. And then I practiced acupuncture for a number of years, including going on board cruise ships, working on cruise ships, pioneering acupuncture at sea, which is really a great time. Yeah, had a lot of fun doing that. And the program is still going. I'm still in touch with a lot of people from those days. So that was a highlight of my career, really.
God, you'd have to be careful popping those needles in if it was choppy.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes that happened. You had to be a bit careful what you were doing, but no, it was great fun, and it was a real light for me. And I wrote about it in my book. So the book is Healing and Adventure, and it's 3 short stories. One of them is called Cruising: A New World View. So it's all about my experience of cruising and trying out this medicine at sea, because it blew my mind, this whole thing of being on this ship. And to me, it was like a planet in space, that we had this new medicine. I know it's old, but to have it in the Western world, China is so, set up in a spa, and they had these old kind of statues of, the gods, Mexican gods. And it was just really, I just loved it. So it inspired me to write all about it. So that's in the book, Healing and Adventure. And then the other story is about my experience as a mental health nurse. And the last one is a personal story about my diagnosis of bipolar myself. And I was in 2010, which is a decade ago now. It's, incredible when how time moves on, but it was about a decade ago. So I guess what we're saying there about the mental health, I'll pick it up from my own personal point of view. I had some mental, emotional challenges, difficulties. A lot of it, I think, if I'm honest, was about, work, getting enough work. Because, when I graduated as an acupuncturist, it's hard to get a full-time practice going. And they don't really tell you that when you're studying. And there's, it's all very new. And you do a module on setting up a business, but the amount of work you have to do to establish yourself in this country, it takes its toll. Yeah. So I think that was really one of the main reasons I struggled. And I was back and forth to the GP, and then depression, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't sleeping. Then I was prescribed antidepressants, which can affect you in different ways. So eventually I got a diagnosis of bipolar. and I was recommended, that I would probably be on medication for my life. And being holistically trained, that just didn't sit well with me at all. But I did go on the medication for a while. And paradoxically, at that time, I was doing a caring job as well as the acupuncture, which was always part-time, but I was doing care work. And my manager at the care place said, why don't you do nursing? They give you a bursary. You've already got all the skills with your acupuncture. You're going to get guaranteed work and money. So I looked into it, and I looked into it, and there was adult nursing or mental health. And because of my diagnosis, I thought, well, I can go into psychiatry, do this as well as the Chinese medicine. So that's what I did. I went to King's College University, very prestigious university. I was very happy that I got in there. But and I was going into Waterloo, these kind of iconic campuses every day, and it was, it gave my ego or whatever a boost, to be getting, I felt wow, and then I eventually got onto working on the wards and working with people, and so I was then had two hats, if you like, but it was overall, it was obviously healthcare. It was health work and healthcare. Yeah. And aside from the work, I had my own personal interest having this diagnosis. So, so basically that was 2013, 2014, into 15. And what happened was I really sort of became disillusioned with the system, because it was still set up to medicate people, despite the fact that they had yoga and art therapy and people coming in to do different things. The overall thing was still medication. And so it didn't sit right with me. And I started to research outside of this, and I came across this fascinating doctor called Dr. Bregging, Peter Bregging, who is an American doctor from New York. And he's now in his 80s, but he's been an advocate for mental health reform all his life. And he's just a lovely man. If you watch any of his YouTube clips, he explains very personably all about medication, the history of it. He takes you back. It's very interesting. It takes you back to the 1950s when the first antipsychotics were developed, and how it revolutionized, the treatment in the asylums at the time. But what he makes very clear is that the medications came first. Not the biochemical imbalance theory. That was added on. They didn't have any evidence of biochemical imbalance. They just knew that these medications were causing positive effects. Yeah. So, for example, there was a guy there in the asylum. He talks about that he was, never talked. He didn't come out of himself at all. And then he was given a course of this medication, and he was able to do the Christmas decorations in the asylum. And he was much more open, and so it revolutionized things at the time. But what Breggin says, that his career was taking off at this time. And what he quite simply did is he went in and he spent time with these patients 24/7. And he got a little team, and he got it okay with his professor that he could be with these people every day. And he said that the attention he gave to people helped, cured them, basically, changed them, brought them out of themselves, really made an effect, and enabled them to leave the asylum without medication. But because this medication was coming in at the same time, it took off and became the mainstay of psychiatry. Now, this guy has been a
very interesting.
It's fascinating. He's been in psychiatry all his life, and he's never prescribed a psychiatric drug once.
That's incredible. It's really interesting when we go back a little bit and look at the history. I teach clinical hypnotherapy, and one of the techniques I teach is what we call the Esdale state. Now, the Esdale state it's one of my favorite states. I have to just drop that in, because it is absolutely lovely. And it's a state of very deep trance, very deep state trance, to the point where you are so very, very peaceful and so very, very relaxed. You're awake. You're in a very focused state of awareness. You can hear everything that's going on. Your awareness is very present. But you are so very calm and so very peaceful. For me, it's like heaven on earth. It's a beautiful state. But we become, in that state of trance, we become a bit disconnected from our conscious body, if we like, and we we are very just the unconscious part is switched on. So we feel very, very peaceful, and we're not really connected massively with our physical body in that state. So if we're struggling with pain or physical pain whilst you're in the Esdale state, you don't feel any pain. There's no pain. There's no sensation of pain. So Esdale discovered this, hence the name. It's called Esdale state, and he used to use this level of deep trance to perform surgery.
Wow.
He did thousands and thousands and thousands of quite intense surgeries, operations, using trance as that anesthetic. And as pain management to people didn't experience pain, and of course because they didn't have any kind of drugs on board on the system, their recovery rates were quite good as well, particularly when you think of the time and where they were, and then the germs and the bacteria and things that were in those theatres then, people had good recovery time. But it came out, his kind of trance work was around the same time as when we kind of discovered chloroform, where people would then inhale the fumes of the chloroform, and that would make them unconscious. Chloroform and laughing gas.
It's like a similar thing, isn't it? That's very interesting.
And the medicines, the medication way is the way that was more welcomed. It was more acceptable, and it's become how we use what we use normally on an everyday basis in theatre. You would never think about having knee surgery, not in this country that I'm aware of, but there are hospitals around the world that I know of and I'm aware of, and I'm in contact with who use hypnosis
so what we're talking about is alternative medicine, isn't it, Amanda? And I think we're both passionate about this, and because the focus, I mean, when I started to study alternative medicine and Chinese medicine, the underpinning things was the person is at the center and it's holistic, and that was the main driver. And when you get into the what you can be naive, because you go into the world, you think all doctors are good, all policemen, but people are money motivated. That's the bottom line. And to keep your purity in life, it's a challenge. But to me personally, that I'm no saint, but I really was struck by that, to really help people. And so when I came across these things in mental health, it kind of, I just couldn't, it really struggled with the fact that the psychiatrist doctor would not be thinking completely about the person, but would have a little agenda. And you can see it when you're in a lot of these rooms, that when someone comes in with a presentation, the psychiatrist makes a decision quite quickly. And you can see them switching off their emotions to the person because they've diagnosed them already. And this is what I saw a lot of in the room, And, there was a guy, for example, who came in and I was looking after him. He just got out of prison. And I could see that he needed to be in touch with his family and friends. He was missing his family and friends. And I could really see this was so important. I was working with him and talking about all this with him. And we went to see the psychiatrist and he touched on it a little bit. But straight away he was saying, I think we should try you on, such and such, the drug. And it's important. And that became, and it just kept coming up again and again and again, this to me. And I thought, this guy just really maybe the drug might help, but we haven't talked enough about his family. He's had this big problem with his mother or whatever. This is the most important thing. So I really struggled with it when I was on the wards. And I got to a point where I thought, no, I have to leave here. And the matron set me aside and she said, you're very brave, because you're going out, you're in the NHS, you've got a pension, you've got all the rest of these benefits, and you're brave to leave. But I just felt that I had to, at the moment in time. So, it was a struggle when I left that job. But
I went through a very similar experience because my background is in care work and nursing. And I actually did work in a psychiatric hospital in Edinburgh, on the outskirts of Edinburgh many years ago. It was a really old-fashioned mental
Okay.
asylum style
Yeah, yeah,
hospital,
the old
with
style.
that kind of vomit pink paint all over the walls.
Yes,
And
yeah,
really long corridors that you could imagine people being strapped to, and they did still use electric shock therapy there, which is very
yeah,
interesting. There's,
yeah.
it does work incredibly well, but nobody seems to know why. And that's the
Mm.
reality of it. We don't know why this works, but it does seem to.
Well, yeah, it was the same
You
at the
know,
hospital as well. I mean, personally, I wouldn't advocate that either. It was something I don't think that's. I mean, it's just controversial, and everyone has their own opinion, but I don't think that's particularly good. And I used to see it at the hospital. We used to take patients up to have electroshock therapy, but I mean, I really do think that the system needs overhauling. And like we were saying earlier, with all this attention in the media now and Prince William going around and talking about mental health, which is very good, I think it's time now that this gets pulled out to the surface.
yeah.
Psychiatry basically, because
Where are we now, do you think? Where are we now with psychiatry? Obviously, we've talked a bit about the history in the past of psychiatry and how medicines came before understanding of the mind,
yeah.
and before even the idea of chemical imbalances, or the idea of a disease kind of theory of mental health.
I guess
Where
I
are we
think
now?
well, I think what it is, to surmise it, I mean, if you go back in time, it was a paternal system, and it's the doctor knows best. Now, that's another principle of holistic medicine. We're empowering people. We don't know. We have knowledge, but we're making a relationship all the time with our clients, aren't we? And we're trying to, what's the best for them. So if you look at the history of psychiatry, it was very much that the doctor knows what to do, and it is a bit subservient, and that's not empowering and not really a principle of healthcare, and again, it astounds me when you think about that. But that is the nature of the way things are set up. But I think just on a personal, just a reasonable level, I would come from a trauma school of psychiatry, of psychology, where everything that happens in your life, whether you've been living in a war zone or you've just stumped your toe on the bath, everything is something that you can talk about and something that you can get in touch with. And instead of these disorders that just make things such an illusion, what's wrong with you? It's a brain disease. There's no such thing. It's just because it's dangerous thinking when you say to someone they have a brain disease. And the other thing that Peter Breggin says, it's horrible when you sit with, somebody who is socially disconnected sits down and is told that he has this label you can't even pronounce or spell, schizophrenia. What a horrible, and how hopeful does that sound when you say that to someone? You have this disease for your life. It's not a happy, healthy thing. And so he talks about what's happening with someone with schizophrenia is that the social fabric is annihilated, that they're so alone, they're so withdrawn from people and contact, that obviously you start making stuff up, you start seeing things. So what you want to start with, what he does in his therapy, is he connects people back to their family, starts talking, getting family therapy, get people in, and this is the way, and it's so much hopeful, it's so much more loving, and so much, and that's really what spoke to me, when I was looking into all this kind of thing. So I think the question is really that that we should be, we're doing this as holistic therapists anyway, aren't we? We are talking to people, we are interested in their emotions, we are thinking holistically. We don't just focus on their head and their brain. So that's, I think that's what we should be doing, really. And
it's very interesting. I was talking with Jenny Goddard, who's the she runs the Complementary Medical Association. That's her baby, and it's an incredible organisation that she runs. And it's just brilliant. Lots and lots of research and study. We were talking like off air, if you like, about something very similar, and we were saying that a nutritionalist will study for 4, 5, 6 years before they give nutritional advice. And they will have a very in-depth understanding of the body and about what vitamins and minerals do and the impact of different foods. And they'll have an awful lot of knowledge. A GP, a general practitioner, will study in his entire kind of career of learning about 8 hours of nutrition and give nutritional advice on 8 hours of nutrition, and will dismiss the nutritionalist who studied 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, will dismiss them on their 8 hours worth of training. And what we were saying is, actually, for years, we've been attempting to communicate with conventional Western medical approaches about what we do. But actually, what we were saying off air really was that we're better at what we do than what you do, because we have a broader spectrum of how we look at the body. We don't just look at sore thumb and fix sore thumb. We look at what's underlying those issues. We look at lifestyle. We look at mental well-being.
Exactly.
We look at a whole person.
Exactly.
We're not just machines.
I mean, if you think, but I think, from my point of view, when I first got interested in this, my auntie gave me a book called Anatomy of the Spirit, which is written by Caroline Mace, who's a medical intuitive from America. And it just blew my mind. I mean, she would get visions. People would come to her and she would get an idea or a sense of what was wrong with them. She was like talking to someone on the phone and she said, "You've got concrete in your throat." That's what she got picked up from someone. And she was diagnosing cancer of the throat. But she had these amazing mystical, I suppose you'd call them, experiences where she realized that her intuitive abilities were really kicking off. And then she wrote these books, and she wrote this book with Norm Shealy, who's a neuroscientist who worked with her, was a very good man. And they worked together and they wrote a book called The Creation of Health. And then she went on and wrote Anatomy of the Spirit, which is the one my auntie gave to me. But it just blew my mind. And it's like, I think where we are now is we are in a new age. We are in a new time, and people talk about the time of Aquarius and these things, which I guess for a lot of medical doctors, GPs, it's like, here we go, he's gone, he's gone back. But, from my own personal experience, like I've had mystical experiences and things, and to me, the world is fascinating and wonderful place. And I think that we're privileged to be born at this time in history. And there are big changes, not just in medicine, but all over the world, But so in terms of medicine and that, we're energy beings, every thought is connected to our body. And so those old models, they're no good anymore. Obviously Western medicine still has advantages, and, in acute medicine particularly, of course.
Absolutely.
We don't want to throw the baby.
Don't send me to a homeopathic doctor if my leg's fallen off. That's not going to help me. I don't want to see an aromatherapist, if I've lost a limb or if I need out surgery. There's definitely some absolutely incredible advances, and I'm not anti-medicine either. I'm not against people taking medication. I actually believe that there are people who need it and who should take it, and there's evidence.
But I guess what the thing is, it's the mind-body connection. I think in a nutshell, what it is that if we accept that we are evolving into a different species now, and the term Homo spiritus or Homo noeticus, which is the being that knows itself, as opposed to Homo sapiens, was what we were before, right? And sapiens is the being that thinks. There was a wonderful program, Walking with Cavemen. I don't know if you saw it.
It was a while ago, wasn't it?
What's the guy, that scientist, David somebody? But it's a brilliant program. I got the book.
Great. Oh, I've lost it.
Oh, we've gone low battery now.
That's all right.
But anyway, it took us through, and I think that's what we're at now. We are a different species. So we know that our thoughts affect our body in a very profound way. So that is going to affect your health. So therefore, what you think, you create your own reality. so positivity, and they're not just throwaway things. And this is another thing that irked me in psychiatry, CBT, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy. Oh, maybe you can have CBT and get on a waiting list for 2 years, but it's deeper than that, really. It's not just about, of course that's good, but they don't go into the fact that what you think affects your physical tissues. You can regenerate your heart and stuff. I mean, it's amazing, really. So this is holistic medicine, and it's not it's very
interviewed
powerful.
Helen just a couple of weeks ago. Helen regrew her own spine using the power of her mind. She was paralyzed for 7 years. Just decided that wasn't going to be it. And using imagination, using visualization and self-love, she regrew her own spine. And now she tours the country and talks about and tells people her story. She also after recovering from paralysis, she then was diagnosed with cancer and given 100 days to live. 2,000 days on, she's healthy. She's
it's
really well, and it was a change of mindset that a change of mindset and self-love, that visualizations, the power of the mind. So many people are talking about these things, and we're not anti-medication at all. We're just saying, open your mind, take off the blinkers. There are lots and lots of things that you.
That's right. And then in terms of psychiatry and mental health, if you're going to take medication, let's be clear about what exactly is it doing. Let's be honest. And then give the patient the choice. That's so important,
So your personal experience is that you were diagnosed or labeled with bipolar disorder in 2010, was that right?
That's right, yeah.
And you obviously were medicated and given the usual format of, this is how you're going to have to live forever, and this is going to be you. But then 3 years ago, you made quite a controversial decision to come off your medication, and because you had so many questions about the medication that you were given, and you feel that right now, today, it was the best decision you could have ever made, and you feel healthy. And
I do, and I feel like I'm an advocate, really, for this.
So what was the process that you went through? I mean, that must have been quite scary, because we as a member of the public, when I hear about somebody with schizophrenia or bipolar, or somebody with what I'm going to think in my head is quite a severe mental well-being disorder or a challenge in their life, is going to cut off their medication, does that not mean that in 5 or 10 minutes they're going to be running around the street like being a crazy axe murderer or stabbing people? Or are they not going to be a danger to themselves or to the greater society?
So you mean I had all those questions. I had all those questions.
Scary. Scary.
It is scary, and it's baby steps, but I think you have something inside you that is so, without sounding cheesy, but something inside you so strong, and a voice that keeps knocking on the door, and so you say, okay, so I got married at that time, which was very helpful, because I had this person in my life that I love very much, and was a stabling force, if you like, and gave me the strength so I come off and see what happened. And also our life changed a bit, and I had more time. We moved out of London, we moved up to Scarborough, and we were living by the sea, and it was a very healing environment, so I was able to really just take time and feel what I was feeling and get in touch with my emotions. And I tapered down the dose. I did it gradually, and I recorded it and wrote it all down, and it was July 2017, so it's nearly 3 years now. And
you're not crazy. You've not run around the streets naked and stabbed anyone or things.
No, I mean, I've had ups and downs, don't get me wrong, but I really think it's just normal. And I feel, I really honestly, hand on heart, feel better than I've ever felt. So
do you feel like you've healed in some way, or do you feel like you're managing your diagnosis in some way? Do you still kind of stick with the label thing and manage it, or what's your kind of thoughts on your
I don't like the label at all.
I hate labels.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know that it can be helpful if you're suffering, and obviously there's a positive side, and you sort of, you can leave work and you perhaps get some benefit money, and then you can sit at home for a bit and get, you get sympathy, don't you? And it's quite nice. But I think in that process, you get to a point where you feel better, and then you don't want to be different. Actually, you think, wait a minute, everything's working here. I can, I just feel like you are. I'm no different to you or you or you. So then you think, well, let's go back to work. Let's start living more fully. And that's, and as those things gradually line up and you're doing everything that everyone else is, you think, what is this diagnosis? This is, I'm not to say that I haven't struggled and I'm suffered, and I know those around me, family and friends, they have their own take, and everybody, a different version of things that, whatever, and everyone's different. But I think, personally, I know inside of myself that I am happy and healthy today, and I don't need medication, and that my life is getting better every day. And I really believe that. So yeah.
Seems like a huge and quite controversial idea to come off medication, but I think part of your decision was because you had a deeper understanding of, like, where in psychiatry the idea of a biochemical imbalance comes from, the idea of there being something faulty in the wiring of the mind, almost.
That's right. I think it's integrity.
Medication.
Yeah, it's integrity, isn't it? I mean, it's because as you get into your own health, integrity is so important for health. And so if you look at the underpinning, models of psychiatry, and they're not right, then that's not right. You're living a lie, and then that's going to affect your body, so I think that's so important. And to, so that was my my understanding.
We used to have a disease model, didn't we, of mental sort of well-being. We and it was quite a nice thing, I think, for a time, to be able to diagnose and label everybody, because it gives them access to resources. It puts them into a nice box. You're labeled this label, so you can have this help and this funding and these resources and this medication, and it kind of helped us to kind of help people in a systematic kind of a way. The reality is, I think, for many people, is a label. If you give somebody the label of depression, depression is so personal and so individual and affects people in so many unique ways. But Western medicine treats that in exactly the same way. Here is some tablets, go away. Very rarely, you get put on a waiting list and made to wait for a really long time, and you might get 2, 3, 4 sessions of talking therapy, or if things have got really bad, you might get some CBT or or maybe some other therapy thrown in. But it's very rare that you're going to get actually what you need. And it's interesting that you say the research that you've done focuses on spending time with people and reconnecting them back to friends, back to family. Because actually it's communication and it's connection and it's talking with family that seem to be the real healers.
So important. Like you said earlier, we are social beings, and this time is very, very hard for a lot of people with or without mental health problems, isn't it? This isolation period.
I was just telling Frank before we went on it that I've got a hunger that cannot be fed. I'm a massage therapist as well as a host of the Wednesday Wellbeing show, and as well as the director of the Northern College Clinical Hypnotherapy, and I work a lot with different people in person, either touching them or working with them in my therapy room. And I've now had like 13-14 weeks with absolutely no physical contact, and it's so weird because I'm a hugger, and I massage and touch and connection with people is so important for us, isn't it? For
it is. It really is. Yeah,
I'm really noticing it. I've upped my self-care so that I'm doing lots of things that would nurture me in that kind of a way, nice salt baths and snug blankets. I'm doing lots of havening technique and self-hugs and things like that.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? So God willing, we can get back to, being able to touch people and, in a therapeutic way, of course.
Yeah.
And, I hear exactly what you're saying there. It's so true.
So it's where we are with psychiatry now is we used to just kind of like follow, I guess, that Western medical model, and kind of try and adhere to it and say, this was like some kind of a superior form of medicine. What we're actually saying now is, let's shine a light on this superior form of medicine. Let's ask questions. Is there such a thing as chemical imbalance in the brain? Does that even exist? What is the disease model? And is it factual? Is it right? Is the science now supporting that, or have we moved on? And do we know a lot more? And are you just doling out medicines and medication because there's a profit to be made, or is medicine something that is genuinely going to help people? And I think sometimes many times the medication is genuinely needed, but we need to, it's time, isn't it, to have an honest conversation about
definitely exactly right. I mean, the thing I was thinking was there in terms of Chinese medicine, we was always taught patterns, which are much more fluid, in terms of working with people, because we do as humans categorize things, don't we? But if you talk about the Western models, a little bit more rigid, whereas in Chinese medicine, it was patterns, and, so you can move a bit more fluidly between one and the other. And that's just a bit more harmonious, I think, way of working.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And what I love about the patterns in traditional Chinese medicine is that they are patterns that we see in nature as well. They're patterns that we see in the world, rivers and streams and seas.
Again, connecting us to the natural world. Just so important, it's beautiful. It's like we talked about before, the rivers and the streams, and we're all part of nature, and we're eternal, aren't we? It's just wonderful. And when you really get into those truths, there's no need to be afraid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or anxious about anything, really.
If somebody's listening to this interview and they are perhaps very similar to yourself, they're in a position where they have had a mental health diagnosis of something, and they think, do you know what, there's that little voice in me as well that's saying, I don't really like this, I'm not really comfortable with this. Obviously, we're not advocating coming off your medication. That needs to be done with medical supervision, but can people reach out and have that conversation with you as well?
Of course they can, Amanda. Yeah, definitely. I have that Facebook page, which is just Frank Ramsey Acupuncture, and people can contact me through there anytime they like. I think that's probably the most direct way at the moment to contact me.
And get your book as well.
Yes, exactly. I've got it here.
There it is. Healing and Adventure, a trilogy of short stories that are going to inspire you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And
entertain. Yeah.
And entertain as well, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It's been great chatting to you.
Amazing to talk to today. Really inspiring, very, very interesting, and quite a hot topic, I would say, of debate, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Would you go and see a specialist who's working on a model that's outdated, that is going to prescribe medication that may harm you? Or are you going to ask some questions about the real benefits and get some understanding? I think we do, as holistic therapists, aim to empower people, and a part of that process is encouraging people to be informed, to ask those questions. Well, obviously we're not condoning coming off medication. If you're on medication right now, that needs to happen with medical supervision.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah, that's true. Very important. Yeah.
To ask the question.
Yes.
People like Frank, who've got a great understanding and a wealth of knowledge, you can reach out to him or have a chat with your GP about it. But ask those questions.
Exactly right.
Systems that are in place.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. It's lovely to see you on the Wednesday Wellbeing show. You take really good care of yourself.
All right. Thanks, Amanda.
Bye.
See ya.